Hello, you're listening to Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast, presented by Brandon Elliott. This show will be going over all aspects of real estate investing and is intended to educate, motivate, and prepare you to take action on your first or next real estate investment. For more information, please visit BrandonElliottInvestments.com. Thank you for listening and enjoy.
Welcome back, everyone, to Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Brandon Elliott. Today, we have a special guest. You're in New York, right?
Coming from New York, yeah.
All right. I was about to say New Jersey for a second, but I was
don't do that to me, man. Don't do that to me.
Don't do that. So very close in New York, which is awesome. And what's really cool about Matt is that we met about a month or two ago over at a mastermind group that we're a part of with Kent Clothier for the boardroom. And he presented on what he has going on in his business over in New York of basically the 203K way, which for real estate investing, it's creative different strategies. I'll let him dive into it in just a second, but I don't want to take too much of the glory. But it's a really awesome way that somebody brand new can be able to take this, implement it, and be able to get into a new investment property with very little out of pocket, and how you can transform this, be able to basically do the BRRRR strategy in one sense or another, and be able to start just slowly compounding it over time, which is awesome. It's very creative and I love it. So anybody that's brand new that just feels lost of like the money aspect, the deal aspect, and everything in between as a brand new entrepreneur getting started into real estate investing, this is the episode for you. I think it's going to transform your life. It's going to unlock something and give some kind of breakthrough. So without further ado, Matt, what's happening, brother? How are you today?
Thanks, man. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for jumping on if you're listening. Super excited to be here. And we connected really well. It was awesome talking to you and just seeing the similarities between our businesses and everything. And really stoked for you to invite me on. And any way I could give value to your community, I think, as you said, it's very special. It's a unique thing. There's not a lot of exposure on the 203K loan and specifically how to leverage it, right? And I'm excited to give you guys more details on how I got started and how you can implement it.
Yeah, it's really not being talked about. Like everybody's talking about wholesaling or fix and flip or the BRRRR strategy, right? But the 203K way is really a different strategy that many people just aren't taking advantage of or even are aware of. So it's time today that we bring some awareness to the situation and how people can get started. So for anybody out there that doesn't know who you are, where you're from or what you're up to over the years, do you mind just diving into that?
Yeah, man. So my name is Matt Porcaro. I'm the founder of the 203K way. And I specialize in helping aspiring real estate investors leverage the little talked about 203K loan to really set their real estate investing careers into orbit. I call it the 203K way because it's just another way to get started in real estate. And it's one that's not spoken about enough. It sure as hell wasn't spoken enough when I got into it. And I'm still, I think, the only person really talking about it. It is real estate's best kept secret, especially for people just starting out. And I'll get more into what the 203K loan is in a second. But really, just like, a lot of aspiring real estate investors, I got the bug around when I was in college, actually. And, as I'm going through college, I got my first internship and I started working at an engineering design build firm in New York City. And, my whole life, I've always been one to really just work my butt off and figure work hard and I'll find my way. Right. And what ended up happening was got into this internship and realized very quickly that, the way that people were working at this job wasn't really aligning with the way that I see work being. Right. And it was kind of like, it was like the cubicle life, kind of the 9-to-5 monotony of like, hey, yeah. Oh, you're not finished with that? Okay. Just come back tomorrow. We'll start it back tomorrow. And, realizing very quickly that I was working, around circles around people. But at the end of the day, the guy next to me is getting paid the same, if not more than me. And I felt like I wasn't getting rewarded for what I was putting in. So, did all the things, followed all the advice. But at the end of the day, I knew I wanted to be wealthy and I knew I wanted to change the way that maybe my family kind of experienced with money. I came from a blue collar family, love my dad to death, love my family to death, but just really rough business models. He's a business owner himself, small business owner himself. And, all the things he's actually in construction, general contractor. So ultimately, again, we weren't poor by any means, but being in construction, there was just like a lot of ups and downs. And when you're a really impressionable young kid, you realize when you don't have money or money's tight, right? Electric goes off, you realizing you're only eating pasta for weeks. And, just knowing that all the stresses, it seemed like, at least for my young eyes, all the stress and all the anxiety and all the anger in my home would spring most of the time from money, right?
Sure.
So, as someone, when I first started like dating my wife and everything, she noticed that I was always focused on money and always focused on doing the right thing. And she always never really understood why. And I still to this day, and she understands now, but when that's kind of the focus of what was basically bad in your life at an early young age, you realize to put so much focus on it. Because for me, I didn't want that to be the same case for me. So with that being said, that's kind of why that whole mindset, is important. And it's important for a lot of people just getting into this, right? Everyone I find comes from that same kind of world of like, they want to do better, right? They want to set themselves out from the pack. They don't want to go into the 9-to-5 rat race and kind of trade time for money for the rest of their lives. They know that there's other ways. One of the ways, I'm sure many people hear about it, it's so cliche, but I picked up Rich Dad, Poor Dad one day. I was actually working at that job in New York City, walking down Fulton Street, going to Five Guys to stuff my face with a bag full of fries and a giant burger. And I'm walking down the street and, down the street in Manhattan, you have guys like selling all kinds of stuff on the side of the road. And there's a guy selling old books, used books. And there was a whole Robert Kiyosaki section. And I never really knew about the book, but I had heard of it. And I looked at it and I saw Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and like I think it was Cash Flow Quadrant and one other. And I think I got all the books for like $5, right? And, that $5 pretty much was like taking the red pill, right? Because I went down the rabbit hole, man. I realized very quickly. And it was funny because I turned into this like kind of guy that was, as soon as I finished reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I'm like, screw the man. Like, I don't want to work a 9-to-5. I'm going to create my own business and blah, 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 and do all this stuff. And it was funny because very quickly I turned into a very pessimistic person about jobs and W-2 incomes and everything. But fast forward. Yeah, no, exactly, man. I went in, I'm like, oh, these guys don't even know what's going on. But one of the things about it was like, I started going the whole business model route. But as I read that book, he's talking so much about real estate and how real estate's the greatest wealth builder. And that's really how people get rich. But as I'm reading it, I'm kind of glazing over it. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to own real estate. Real estate's for rich old dudes that can buy like a ton of properties, right? To me, the idea of even buying one house in New York seemed entirely impossible, right? So I just kind of, I was like, I'm not buying. I don't think investing for real estate for me, but I could probably do a couple different businesses. So that kind of pushed me down that rabbit hole of trying to start online businesses, doing a bunch of things, e-commerce, option trading, affiliate marketing, all kinds of things. And I tried and failed at pretty much all of them. But I was, listening around and I had heard about wholesaling through a couple different podcasts, tried my luck at that. And honestly, for 4 years here in New York, man, I was a young kid. I don't know if I got the right training or really understood that correctly, but I really tried my luck at wholesaling, man, trying to find deals. Did all the things, did the mailers, did the door knocking, signs, bandit signs, all the stuff. And just, man, I couldn't get anything to work. And I was trying that for years. And I thought like, that's the only way. Cause again, I had no money, right? So the whole idea of like needing money to get started. So lo and behold, I was a member of the local Long Island RIA group. And, one day I'm like, all right, well, cause I had all that imposter syndrome, or not imposter syndrome, but all that, making excuses in my head, like, oh, New York, you can't wholesale in New York, or you can't find deals in like, it doesn't work in my market. So let me go to the local RIA because they have the secrets probably. And I went there and I ended up joining their mentorship program. I'm like, all right, so they're going to know what's going on, right? Because Long Island's crazy. It's super competitive, so expensive, super high taxes. They got the key. I went and I joined the program. And sure enough, it was like, no offense to the program, but all the same exact shit I've been reading and training on and seeing in books and podcasts and other courses that I had taken. And I'm like, what the hell, man? So the leader of the RIA, she's this lady, Melissa. She super mom, has a lot of kids, tons of properties, everything like that. She's just one of those people, you just don't know how they do it, right? Like, how do you have enough time in the day? So anyway, went over there and I pulled her to the side one day. I'm like, listen, I've been trying out this thing for way too long without any success. Like, if you could go back and start over, like, what would you do? I'm like, listen, I have a job. I was 25, 26 years old at the time. Like, I have maybe a little money saved up in the bank, but I can't hang with these investors that have $50,000 to $100,000 in liquid cash flow, like, or liquid equity to take something. So she's pulled me aside. She's like, listen, what I would do is I would use something called an FHA 203K loan. What's that? All these years of me reading about real estate investing, tons of books.
Haven't found that one, right?
Never heard that. It was the first time I even heard that. I said, okay, well, what's that? She's like, well, what it allows you to do is it allows you to purchase fixer upper properties for only 3.5% down. I said, what? She's like, yeah. So what you could do is you could purchase like a foreclosure. There was lots of foreclosures back then. She's like, you could purchase a foreclosure and buy something that you could renovate. The beauty of the loan is you're able to wrap the renovation costs into the mortgage. Yep. And that allows you to buy something that's a fixer upper, not have to pay out of pocket. All you pay is 3.5% down of the purchase price plus renovation. So for example, rough number, say you purchase, easy numbers, you purchase a house for $50,000. You put another $50,000 in renovation into it. Okay. So your total amount is $100K. You only have to come up with $3,500. So she said, go do that. She said, you're single, go buy a house, live in the basement, rent out the upstairs, and basically do a burst strategy, right? With only 3.5% down. It's an owner occupied loan. But she said to you, as someone starting out, and to anybody listening, to someone starting out that has flexibility on the next place that they want to live, you go in, you do that, you use your owner occupancy as a way to super leverage yourself into probably one of the most strongest forms of leverage there's out there. So she told me this and she absolutely blew my mind because for years I thought to buy a house, I needed $50,000, $100,000, $150,000. So all of a sudden I'm like, well, in my market, that's probably around like 10 grand or something like that. I could do that. I could save that up. And sure enough, I started saving, went home, jumped on Google, banging the keyboard, like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And there's nothing about it. Like just absolutely zero information about this loan out there. The little information that was out there didn't really help me kind of identify what I wanted to do. But anyway, fast forward, I kind of kept it in the back of my head and eventually got in touch with a lender. Once I had started saving up some more money, feeling like I got enough to, get like about 10, 15 grand in my pocket. I called the only loan broker I knew and I asked him about this thing. He's like, yeah, man, let's get you started. Let's do it. And sure enough, before I knew it, I was pre-approved and, for not a lot of money in New York, right? I found out that, still I really couldn't afford much, right? He pre-approved me and I was pretty much looking for houses that were mostly falling down. But anyway, that's what I started to do. I started looking and what I found out was, number one, I could bid on anything that was cash only. I could also go into any type of foreclosure markets, auction markets, all these things that I thought were only were reserved for investors were for me. So I started making lots of offers and sure as it was tough, man, because I was still in a competitive market. Banks didn't want to deal with me, but I just kept to it, placed a lot of offers. And eventually found something he sent over to me. He's like, hey, listen, this is one you could do. And I remember it was listed for like 300,000. I'm like, listen, man, I'm only pre-approved for like 250 or something like that. I can't afford this. And he said, well, listen, when you use an FHA loan and you buy a small multifamily property, you're able to forecast the future income that you get on those other units. So say you live in one unit and the other unit, in my case, is going to rent out for $2,000 a month here in New York. You're able to forecast that future income. And that basically gives you $24,000 a year raise on your debt to income ratio. And you're able to afford even higher. I'm like, holy shit, that's great. So I placed an offer on it and ended up locking it up for $270. It needed about $80,000 worth of work. And I put the $80,000 into it. But, I was all in for $350 at the end of the day. Lo and behold, I knew the tenets of real estate investing from all my training prior. So really what I was looking for was trying to get into the property for, 75 cents on the dollar all in and build equity into it and take that equity and go buy more deals. And lo and behold, I got it reappraised 8 months later for $480,000. My down payment on that house was $9,500. So the only amount of money that came out of my pocket was $9,500. I in turn turned that to $130,000 in equity. I was able to live for free for about a year and then eventually moved out and cash flow that property for $2,000 a month. And I've been doing that for so many years since. So that's obviously after trying so hard, that was what gave me my launch and really gave me the trajectory. And now I felt like I had money. I felt like I had experience. I tell people it's like flipping a house with training wheels on. It allows you to do this with the bank's money with low risk and you're able to get a huge return because you're putting so little out of pocket. So, that's how it got started. And hopefully I like telling people that story because ultimately I feel like a lot of good questions will come out of that. And I'm happy to answer them as we go through this.
Yeah. No, I love it, man. You mentioned a bunch of awesome things and it was so good that I didn't want to stop you at any point. But originally when, I don't know if you want to call it like the mentor of yours that at the RIA group, she ended up guiding you, telling you about educating you on the 203K way. after she explained it to you, originally you couldn't picture yourself after reading like Rich Dad Poor Dad, you couldn't picture yourself getting real estate.
No.
Has anybody in your family owned real estate?
I mean, my parents owned their house, right?
The primary.
But
okay.
Yeah, they had a primary.
Okay. But besides that, you could naturally see yourself starting a business. And it's, primarily most likely because your dad runs his own business, right? Construction.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. Which is awesome. But there's just the unlocking of like, okay, now we believe into it and it just shows opportunity behind it. So you start seeing it. At the end of the day, what makes the 203K really special is you can have very little down, and then the rehab costs, all the money you can, put into the loan, you can stay in it as a single guy and house hack doing the BRRRR strategy. Even if you have a significant other, whatever it may be, you just got to get them on board, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And your father has the construction background. So I'm sure the renovation side, you started to identify and like you were more confident in that aspect, right? A lot of people get caught up in the renovation cost of like, oh man, I'm going to get screwed over, or I have no idea how to bid this out. Did your dad do the work on some of this stuff?
So he didn't really. So what ended up happening, what I found out was that once I got started, I assumed he was going to do the work. But the problem with that is that they realize they see it as a conflict of interest, right?
The banks.
The banks. So the 203K loan is an FHA loan. There's guidelines, there's red tape, as most uninformed people to relay it as. The reality of it is you're using one of the strongest, if not the strongest forms of real estate buying leverage that can be given to your average Joe Schmo. Okay. It is the amount of potential that you're able to create from such a low amount of money is insane. The ability to buy up to a 4-unit property, the ability to pretty much have an open checkbook up to what you're able to afford in terms of being able to renovate this place, the ability to buy something that's literally falling down and be able to build all this equity into it for such little risk out of your pocket. So really what it comes down to is these banks do put together packages that they need you and your contractor and something called a 203K consultant, which I could get into, which is really just a glorified draw specialist. And, not glorified, a very specific loan specialist and home inspector, right? So it's just another thing they put on, another hat they put on. It's
like they're going to be with you the whole process and have to be checking in to be able to give you the draws for the money, right?
Right. And they also help you create the scope of work, right? Oh, cool. So there's a lot of fail safes and things built into this loan, which is very funny because if you talk to like your average realtor or average lender who has no idea what they're talking about on these things, to be like, oh, it's too much work. Oh, it's this, that, and the other thing. No, it's not too much work. When you look at what you're doing, it's things that I had a background in construction. This is all stuff that is par for the course for any successful construction. The thing where people mess up with construction time and time again is they go for the lowest bidder. They have no scope of work, no schedule, and nothing. They just start with Joe Schmo, the contractor, and they don't do any of the due diligence. The bank really forces you to do that due diligence, which is what you should be doing anyway. So the way
it's so good too that they really help guide you with the scope of work, because if not, then it's like that's where I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning. I didn't have 100%. A detailed scope of work.
Yeah, and schedule, right? Now, schedule is something that I promote, and it's not something that the bank looks for. But as you said, construction wasn't the scary part to me, but everything else was, right? Everyone's got their super strength, right? Everyone's got their thing, right? People I work with, right? Some people are monsters with the numbers. They're like, oh, listen, I'm good on analyzing deals. I just need help with the construction. Or other people are like, I'm really good with construction. I just don't know the numbers, or, anywhere or any mix in between, right? So that was my kind of superpower coming into this. But yeah, I wasn't able to use my dad. Obviously, we had connections in the industry. So, we had another contractor that was a colleague of his, and, we did it. And honestly, you don't want family involved most times if you could get away from it too. Obviously, that's kind of the reason why these banks do that. But at the end of the day, it ended up working out. And that was the one thing that I wasn't worried about. But the reality is that the 203K loan and the strategy that you follow, especially a lot what I talk about in my community, is that, it does not need to be complicated. The problem is people don't do the initial stuff in the beginning to ensure a really strong construction rehab.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So at this point, for the easy numbers, for example, or even if you want to talk about your first deal, those numbers, were you able to build up enough equity to be able to do a cash out refinance, or what is the mindset and the projected goals after completing a successful 203K loan?
So that's a great question, right? So the most common question I get asked, hands down, is how many times can you do this, right? How many times can you repeat the 203K loan? Because listen, in reality, when you think of it, like, holy crap, if I only had to put 3.5% down every time, well, this
I
would
want
be
to
the
do
best
this
thing
as many times as I can,
right, right. Now, at the end of the day, it's not a fix and flipper loan. Okay.
No.
FHA knows this. There's stuff in there to really prevent you from doing that, which is a good thing. Again, if it was something that you were able to just run into the ground, you'd have way too many people exploiting it, undoubtedly fucking it up, and then crashing and burning everything into the earth, right? So what makes it special is that it's kind of a thing that you really don't want to repeat over and over again. The good thing about it is if you do it the way that I talk about it and the way that I teach it, is that you start with the end in mind, and you know that your exit strategy is, again, like a Burr method. What you want to do is you want to build enough equity that you can tap into and also create cash flow by purchasing a small multifamily. What you're able to do is you take the equity that you build, you take the cash flow that you've been putting in your pocket, you add that together, and now you have more reserves to go place more down payments on whatever you want to do next. You want to go be a flipper? In my opinion, if you want to start flipping, you don't even have to use any of your own money, right? Or if you want to go start doing buy and holds, then you you tap into your cash reserves and to your equity, and you go buy more deals. What I did, and this is a little tip for anybody listening. So one of the mistakes I made was that, and I made many of them. That's why people like what I talk about. Yeah, right. Because I'm shortening the gap for most people. I had to suffer through it so you guys can get away with doing it a lot easier, right? But one of the things I missed the boat on was, after I eventually, so it took 8 months to finish the renovation. After that 8 months, I realized I built 130 grand in equity. And, for the most part, the bank will only really let you tap into 90% of that. But what I did was I eventually quickly moved out, right? I didn't have to be there. I had just gotten engaged with my now wife, and I moved in with her, and, we started planning for the wedding, everything like that. So, very quickly I got 2 tenants in there, and I was cash flowing that thing after the first year. So what ended up happening was I was like, okay, well, let me do that. And then I knew I had this equity in it. And then obviously I went into getting the, getting the wedding going. I got into my next flip 6 months later, but between the cash flow that I was getting and some of the reserves I already had left and staying, I actually didn't really fully use the equity on that house. I worked with a family office, and they kind of worked out like a unsecured line, but it was a secured line against my house. It was like a very creative way of financing, but basically they gave me, a good portion, 90% of my acquisition and everything. And I rolled in and did my next flip about 6 months later. Okay. But then after that, I realized, damn, I should probably get access to this money. I didn't want to eat into my cash flow, since it's really a cash cow property. So what I wanted to do instead was go a home equity line of credit, especially when I was flipping. I didn't want to be paying for money that I didn't necessarily need in the moment. Right. So what I did was I went back to the bank and went to go pull out a home equity line of credit. Went there and tried to make the point that I'm living there because my name's on it. I wasn't living there. I had a different address on my tax return. Every bank was like, yeah, no shot. When you live there, you get the highest loan to value, right? So I would have been able to tap into, I don't know, $100,000, right? I ended up finding a bank that did it for non-owner occupants. There's plenty of them that out there that do it. That you have to shop around. They change from year to year. But I ended up finding a bank that gave up to 80% loan to value on properties that you don't live in. At the time, it was called Penn Fed. I believe they stopped doing it, but there's plenty of banks that do it. And I basically was able to tap into like $70,000, $80,000 of that. I used that money to go buy more deals, right? And that's what I did. And I would tap into it, pay it back when I was done with it, and just really repeat the process. So, I tell everybody, you don't need to repeat the 203K loan if you don't have to, because the reality is once you do this first one, you're going to open up so many doors for yourself. You're going to be part of the club. I went from the guy that no hard money lender would ever talk to I get hard money lenders calling me freaking every day asking me to use their money, right? I get private money lenders that are like, hey, listen, you doing another flip? I would love to give you my money, right? Because once you get that one and you show people and you have a deal sheet, hey, look what I did. It doesn't matter if it's owner occupied or not. You found and you bought and renovated successfully a property, and you want to keep doing that, right? So you
the
build
numbers don't lie at the end of the day,
numbers don't lie. Yep. Yep. So, that's what I tell people, and behind me, the house I'm in right now, as you know, when we were at that mastermind event, I was closing on my house the next morning. I took a red eye home to New York from Denver, and we closed on the house the next morning. I'm doing the same thing again. I practice what I preach. We're using a renovation loan. That's why it's a little bit in shambles behind us. We have a lot of renovation to do, but the same rules apply, right? And what I did was, I'm doing it again now here a couple of years later. I did it with some family members back when I first started this, and I helped them pretty extensively. And obviously I've helped tons of people do them since, but I went and did it again for our forever home and the same type of numbers. I mean, we picked up something, we're probably already at 150,000 of equity without even doing anything to it.
Nice.
And that's getting on the deal finding side of things. But when we're done, we're going to be upwards of 200 plus. Now, whether I tap into that equity or not on my own primary, I don't know. I don't know if I have to, but at the end of the day, I only believe in doing value add investing. And,
Yes.
I'm doing it years later, but I'm doing it the right way. And I'll continue to do that on any of the properties that I buy.
Yeah, that's so good. So you mentioned a couple things when, originally you said this isn't a program that you can constantly, it's not a fix and flip type of program, right?
Yeah, it's not hard money.
It's not something that you can do multiple times, one after another. However, some of the guidelines behind it is you need to live in the property for what, 1 year? Is that still the case, or is it 2?
So you have to own, it has to be your primary residence for 1 year after the date you close.
Sure. So 1 year you have to live in this, and then you will have PMI. So you'll have to pay because you're under 20%. Mm-hmm. However, if once you build in that equity, you can be able to either do a cash out refi and have a regular conventional loan to be able to get another FHA 203K loan, or be able to take out like a HELOC, like you said, and then be able to utilize those for other avenues to be able to invest. Another awesome thing that many people probably don't even realize is that you can do this with residential real estate, all residential real estate, meaning that 4 units and below, it doesn't necessarily need to be a single family house. You could do it with a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex. Mm-hmm. So talk about like the ultimate house hack. And, you live in 1 unit or rent it out. You only need to live there for 1 year, but you can renovate this whole thing, really be able to have a cash cow and build up enough equity to be able to really compound it and get multiple of these. Is there a restriction like for your first one? Is that still underneath technically an FHA loan?
So
can you have multiple of these loans, I guess, or do you need to do some kind of reconstruction of that loan so you can get another?
Right.
Kind of like loan.
Right. So the rule is that you're only allowed to have one active FHA loan at any given time. Okay. There's another rule to it, which is that on your exit property that you leave. So say you have one FHA loan and you want to go buy it, if you have another FHA loan and you want to move into another property and get another FHA loan, either it has to be over a certain amount of mileage, or, there has to be a plan with what you're doing previously. If you want to keep that property and continue to rent it, there's some red tape and there's some bank overlays that prevent you from repeating it. They want to make sure you have a certain amount of equity in the property, or they want to make sure you have, existing leases in place before you give you the new loan. Because remember, at the end of the day, you're putting this under your name. You can't do this under a business name. There's no reason to do it under a business name, right? Remember, you're new. Okay. The question I hate more than any question in the world is, when can I move this into an LLC? Stop worrying about it. You don't need to protect your assets because you don't have any yet. Worry about that when the time comes. You could do quick claim deeds. There's so many things you could structure. At the end of the day, that's not the focus. The focus is getting one under. But what you're able to do is you're able to get out of that loan, get into something else. Now, there's other renovation loans out there. So the one I'm in right now is called a Fannie Mae home style loan. It's pretty much the exact same thing as the FHA. The only difference is it's not an FHA. So it has a little bit of different guidelines. Honestly, it's way better for single family. Where the 203K shines is with the multifamily. So I say, if you're looking to do a renovation loan, 9 times out of 10, you're going to use a home style loan if you're doing a single family. If you're doing 2 to 4 units, you're going to use a 203K loan. Now, I refinance out of the 203K loan immediately. The way I teach this is that you want to build at least 20% equity into the deal, so that as soon as you are done, you refinance out, get rid of the PMI, and open your potential to possibly go buy another deal. I've worked with people before that they've done that. And, listen, you got to play with the bank's numbers a little bit. You have to play with you got to play the game, right? Remember, you're exploiting this a little bit if you really want to be honest. Yeah. So you have to play within the rules. If you can't play within the rules, use that equity, go leverage hard money, go leverage private money, leverage DSCR loans. All these other things are available to you. But, be methodical with the way you do it. One of the things is called the 4-3-2-1 method. In all honesty, full transparency, I know it exists. I know there's some people that have done it out there. I personally have not met any of those people that have done it. I know some people that are working towards it. Again, there's red tape, but the whole idea is FHA and banks will only like you to see you go down in units for your primary residence and not up. So if you right now live in a single family, in a nice side of town in the suburbs, and you're asking them to go buy a 4-unit to move your family into in the middle of town, next to the train station, they're going to question, why are you going to pick up your family, move from a really nice property in the suburbs and move to an inner city in a fourplex, right? It just doesn't make conventional sense. Now, I don't necessarily agree with it, but that's their stance, right? So you have to play within those lines that if you do want to work down, you start with the higher units. And then as you start moving, you move into lower unit residences, and that'll be what they allow you to do. But the kingpin on this is, and I really honestly think the sweet spot on this is going for a 2-unit. Obviously, everyone really goes for quadplexes. A lot of people that I work with personally get quadplexes or triplexes. Those are obviously the more cash cowy ones. But from what I find is, number one, they're way harder to find. Okay. If you're patient, it's fine. But, I tell people, they tell me, Matt, I just want to find a quadplex. And we work at it and we find them a quadplex. But at the end of the day, if it's not, if you don't really absolutely need all those doors, what's great about the duplex is you get a lot of equity potential and a lot of cash flow potential. Typically what happens as you go up in units, your cash flow potential goes up, but your equity potential goes down, versus in the opposite direction, your equity potential tends to go up with the less units you have. Like, the equity we can make on this single family is great. It's probably way higher than any equity I'd make on a quadplex. Another cool little tip that I want to give for anybody listening is what you're able to do is you're also able to upgrade units, downgrade units. Generally speaking, it's very hard from a zoning point of view to turn a single family into a duplex or a single family into a multi. But you can do it if you find, I have a guy. I have a guy that's doing one in DC, and he was able to get something that's a single family and it's zoned for 2. And he saw that when he bought it. So he ran that, he built that into his numbers. The 203K as a loan allows you to do that. It pretty much allows you to do just about everything. Yeah. The only rule is it has to be an existing structure. There can't be land. But the opposite side of it is
it also needs to be functional, right? It can't like the gas and stove, like that stuff, electric. It needs to be in working condition, right? It can't be dilapidated that bad.
No,
right?
It can. All you need is a foundation.
Oh wow, yeah, that's crazy.
All you need is a foundation. Oh yeah, no, it's crazy. The limitations with it is like you can't like I joke around, you can't build like the Playboy like hot tub grotto in your backyard. Like home style lets you do that, but at 203K it has to be like for the structure of the house. You can't just go and like build a basketball court. Sure. But the point I wanted to make was that you can take a 5-family or a 6-family, and if you wanted to convert it down to a 4-plex, and what you could do, or you can make, what one of the guys that I'm working with, he's converting a 5 into a 4, and he's making that 4th like a double unit. So he's basically making the same amount of cash flow. The only difference is instead of having to put 25% down, he only had to put out 3.5.
And even though it was originally 5 unit, I mean, is that on paper or with the city so that it would be labeled as commercial, but the financing, because of his plans, he's planning on making it residential?
Correct.
Yeah.
As long as the end product fits the bill, you're able to do it. Yep. You're also able to buy mixed use as well, as long as majority of the floor space is residential. So it has to be over half of the floor space needs to be residential.
You could have 2 or 3 units up top that are mostly the floor space, and then a little bodega at the bottom, or like a little hair or something, barbershop.
Yep, wow. You could. The only caveat is you can't use the money to renovate the commercial space, but why would you anyway? You just put it in a triple net lease where you're not responsible for any of that anyway.
I love that. See, I love that. I didn't know that aspect of it. It can get very, very creative in many ways. And, it really comes down to, like you were mentioning, there's many banks out there that will work with you on this stuff. It's time to start building those relationships sooner than later. And
Yeah.
so that you can start, and the education behind it, like not if you're educating me on so much of this stuff. I was prior, like already knew a little bit about it, but the more people need to hear this stuff. So the education to understand how to play within the rules, because there are some particular little ins and outs that you need to be aware of to successfully do this, to fit within their boxes of lending. But it
Yeah.
can really set you up for tremendous success as an investor, as financial freedom, and being a homeowner, and so much more. So I really love that. So at the end of the day, it's hard to find the education out there. I know that you're teaching a little bit of it. Where's a resource that people can learn more?
Yeah, man. So, the best way to find me is Instagram.
Yeah.
You go on my Instagram, it's at the 203K way. That's really where I've been doing all of my teaching and everything for a number of years. On my website, the 203kway.com. On there, I have a free 1-hour training, which I pretty much just go through step by step on, everything I've been explaining, but really in the nitty gritty details on exactly how I do it. And, ultimately, I'm an open book, man. I'm here to help anybody. Obviously I do work with a select number of people that want to work closely one-on-one. And I do that. Those are the people that are like, hey, listen, Matt, love it. Love the strategy. You got all the information out to me. I just want you to look over my shoulder while I do it and make sure I really knock it out of the park. So I offer that. And that's all, details on that are all over the place. You could just look it up on my Instagram and stuff. But yeah, man, for the most part, it's just been a passion project of mine, because at the end of the day, like you said, like you're learning so much about it. It's just a shame that people don't know enough about it. And,
Sure.
part of me, is mad about that. But part of me also realizes that that's what makes it so freaking special. That's what makes it so insanely powerful. I really almost don't want it to go. Someone asked me like if I wanted to do a TV show on it, right? Like the thing would be in it's HGTV, and like start pitching out that like, hey, you could use renovation loans. Like everyone loves these things, but all these shows, they're just paying out of pocket. They're like, oh, I only have so much for a renovation budget. It's like, you don't need it. You can use the bank's money, man. But leverage. It's like, but you're right. But then like, at the end of the day, maybe it would muddy the waters a little bit. So, listen, I like to say that this is the information I wish I had when I started. And, everything I do is just to help people clear the air. The one word of advice I'll give to anybody that starts looking into this: take everything you read with a grain of salt. Obviously, I'll be biased and say, listen, if you come to me, you're going to get the right answer. But the unfortunate reality of this is that there's a lot of so-called real estate professionals out there, realtors, agents, lawyers, contractors, lenders, especially, that will try to steer you away from this thing. Why? Because it's beyond their level of comprehension, and beyond knowledge becomes ignorance, right? When people go, and especially, listen, if you're a real estate agent, you're listening, I love you, but man, oh man, do you have such and I say real estate agents in general always have a bad habit of talking about things they don't know anything about, because they feel like they need to be the professional. And there's just a lot of misinformation about it out there that's being perpetuated by people that should know about it. So just understand that just because someone's trying to push you away, or a lender's pushing you away, just know it's because they don't understand it and they don't want to take the time to understand it. And it's in their best interest to push you into something that you do understand. And they'll make up everything they can to steer you. If that happens, contact me. I will put you with the right people. I will make sure that you're working with people. The reality is there's not many lenders out there that do this, but because of it, it's a very niche group. And I know everybody, every state, and these are happening like crazy in Puerto Rico, anywhere that's a US based sovereignty, you're able to get this loan. At the end of the day, there's niche guys that specialize in renovation loans. This is what they do. You just need to look for those couple people. And there's plenty of ways I can help you with that.
I love it, man. Well, it's very awesome. I know it can help out a lot of people, honestly. And it's a way that you can get educated along the way, even by the banks, on how to set up, and manage the contractors and not get screwed over by the contractors. But the ultimate game here is leverage, and to be able to, take as little money as possible to get started, get yourself into a deal and a real true investment that you're going to have equity. You're going to have opportunities afterwards that you can leverage from with a HELOC or cash out refinance and get into another one and so forth, and just something that's going to cash flow like crazy. So I definitely approve and stand behind everything that you're doing, brother. And just appreciate your time today. Yeah, definitely, guys. I highly encourage you to reach out to Matt. He'll be able to guide you in so much more. And check out on Instagram, it's the 203K way, correct?
Yep.
Or the 203K guy, right?
No, the 203K way. That's the name of
cool.
That's the name of the community. I got a Facebook group. I got all, if anyone watching in Facebook, you can look up the 203K way. I have a Facebook group. I'm sure it's very similar to your group. We're in there all to help each other all the time. But yeah, man, listen, it's at the end of the day, if you're looking to get started, if you have 10, 12 properties and you're watching this, I don't know if this is the best way to, strategy for you right now. But for anybody that is really starting out, you're able to get a bank loan, and you're able to get something this FHA loan is extremely, extremely powerful. And as Brandon talks about all the time, like using leverage, using it in a really smart way, which is exactly what I want you to do. And it's just building that firm base, but do not use your own money. Don't make the mistake we all kind of made in the beginning. Like there's so much money out there ready to be lent to you. You just need to know how to use it and be smart about it. But man, oh man, once you start doing it, it's life-changing.
Shit, I mean, it's crazy. Like 10,000 down to get started was like your first deal, 9,000 something.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even want to know how much equity I have on that property.
I hear you, brother. So it's just like
I'm at like 300K in equity on that property now, just in 6 years, right? So it's.
But check this out. It's like you can $10,000, guys. You can do this with a credit card. Like make sure you qualify on paper. You have the job, the equity, and then like I can
use one of Brandon's things. Get a 0% down credit card. Pull the money out and just season it for 2 months. That's all you need to do. The bank's not going to look past 2 months of your bank statements. You don't even need, I mean, theoretically, if you don't really need to save it up. I mean, I'm a believer in like, listen, it's 10 grand. You could probably muster it up.
Some money,
I think you should save it. But at the end of the day, if you can't, and you could get, you could get one of these lines of credit or something like that, go do it, pull that out. And then you never have to use a dollar.
Yeah, it's crazy. I love this though, man. It's so powerful. So keep doing what you're doing. I definitely commend you for it. I appreciate you and just your heart of giving back to the students and really just being able to teach this stuff because like you said, nobody's really talking about it. So it's awesome. With that being said, guys, make sure you hit that subscribe button for Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast. So you get the newest episode every single Monday. You'll get that notification. And do me a favor, leave that 5-star review. Greatly appreciate all the love and feedback. We are all geared towards educating you, motivating you, and preparing you to take action. Very confident we were able to do that today with Matt. And yeah, I mean, if you guys want to reach out to me, you can always do so on Instagram. It's Brandon Elliott Investments, otherwise Facebook.com/Brandon Elliott Investor. If you need any credit repair done for you services, check out creditrepairmobile.com. Otherwise, if you're really looking to get educated on how we see credit as a whole, it's that 4-step process: educate, fix, build, leverage. We can show you how to fix credit faster than anyone in the industry. I'm talking a couple hours, 10 business days, to really building up to get to the 800 club, getting multiple 6 figures of funding. Ryan in our group, he just got $458,000 in new credit lines. I mean, in 30 days. So you guys can do exactly the same, leverage it into the 203K way or any other business goals, dreams that you have. So if you're interested in more in that, then check out creditcounselelite.com. That's www.creditcounselelite.com. And you guys can be blessed with that. But I appreciate you guys all so much. Matt, you are the man. Appreciate you, brother. And you guys have a blessed day. See you next time.
This has been another episode of Ready, Set, Go Real Estate Investing Podcast, brought to you by Brandon Elliott. For more information, please visit BrandonElliottInvestments.com. Also, please don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below. Thanks again for joining. Until next time, God bless.